2023 is upon us. We are tanned, rested, and ready. Okay, we're two of those three things probably. At least I am. These two guys, I don't know. So on this episode, we talk about everything 2023 for Atlas MedStaff and what you can look forward to from us. Atlas All Access starts now. I said last time I'm going to stop doing this.
I thought you were going to do a new thing this year.
No, I guess not. So
it's happening.
Okay, so welcome back to the show. Steve Seidner, our Chief Operating Officer, but newcomer, Dan Dickmeyer. Give me your exact title.
Yeah, I am the Allied Division Manager.
There we go. Okay, so we have tried this before. Full transparency. We are a travel nurse staffing company, and we hung our hat on that for many, many years. We also realized there's a big hole in what we do here, and that is allied travel. And so Dan is a neighbor of Mike Combs, who runs our business development for us. And to be fair, Mike probably worked on you for a good couple of years.
Yes, yep. It dates back probably 2016 or so.
Yeah. So quite a few years.
Yeah. Yep.
And then he finally wore you down enough to come over here, and it just kind of matched up with what we were looking for. So like I said, we found a hole in what we were doing, and we realized, and you can talk to this, a lot of our contracts, a lot of our better vendors were asking for, look, you're great at nursing, you need allied.
Yeah, I mean, it's as proud of ourselves as we are, there was a hole, like you already mentioned. We kept showing up to these events, we kept winning awards, getting all the kudos that come with it, but there was always a but, like on the back end of it, right?
Yeah.
And although we were doing great things on the nursing side, we were kind of starting to get this reputation of being almost a little bit of like a niche company.
Yeah.
And basically, not niche in size, definitely big enough to play in the deep waters with most of the companies in the industry, but in the fact that we were almost universally providing one solution for them, and that was simply travel nursing.
Yeah.
And over, and one meeting became 3, and 3 became a year, and a year became 2. And it just started being one of these things. We were either going to turn our heads to the requests of our most valued partners and just simply say, no, we just want to do this. It's going to have to be good enough for you. Or we could listen to them and come to the table with what they'd asked for. And they asked us to take a chance and expand our business, And if we do it right with the right partners, it should be good for us, but also good for them and good for all the hospitals. So fortunately for us, Mike Combs, who's been with us 6+ years, had a neighbor with years and years of allied health and allied division leadership experience, and got us to sit down on a couch in his basement one day over a beer or two and started talking about what could it look like here, right?
Yep. It happened very organically. I'd had Atlas in the back of my mind for years, and the timing was just really right. I was able to get that industry experience, and it's 5 years now in the allied space, and just felt like a really good time to make the move, and really excited to just get going and start building this thing out. We've got great people hired for our next class here, and just can't wait to get started.
Talk about that a little bit. Like, okay, your experience, what have you found has been most successful in allied recruiting, and what do you look for in that next allied recruiter or allied client manager? Like, what do you look for there?
Yeah, I think a lot of crossover between the nursing fields and the allied space. Ultimately, you get what out of this job, what you put into it. And so hard work and, that dedication to the job come first and foremost. And then I think just having a passion for helping allied clinicians or nursing clinicians find work, that's where it really boils down to. If you truly have a passion for this and can kind of, take a little bit of credit for that downstream impact that it has on patient care, that's where I think the really good recruiters separate from the just okay recruiters. And but I think when we were building out this first class, we looked for subject matter experts, so people who had knowledge of healthcare in general, and then people that just were really passionate about the allied side of the business, because it's different. It's a little more challenging. It's a smaller job pool. It's a smaller candidate pool, but we feel like we've got a really good foundation laid with this January class, and And then we had a couple of people internally, brave souls internally, transfer over to the space as well, and we're getting them going, and they're bought into it and excited about getting it going too.
One of which is respiratory therapist, right?
Correct.
That kind of cut her teeth working on the nursing side.
Yep.
And then as soon as this happened, she was the first to raise her hand and say, "Oh yeah, like
Yeah.
she would absolutely fit in with your group."
Absolutely. Ashley Stanger is a respiratory therapist traveler of Atlas turned recruiter. About half of her desk is comprised of respiratory therapists. And she was, like you said, the first one to raise her hand up. She had been kind of behind the scenes clamoring for us to start an allied division. And her name came up on my first visit down to Houston with Steve and Rich for SIA, and heard her name come up, and it was a logical choice for us to start off with her transition over to the allied space.
So let's talk about, on top of allied then, what do you expect for this year? Because, boy, if we went back and looked at last year, and I'm fairly sure you and I did this. I'd have to go back and look for sure, but I'm fairly sure we did this. And I don't know if 2022 turned out quite like we thought it was going to. What do you think for 2023? Like, where do you think things go?
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question. I think maybe we touched on it a little bit last year, but this year it kind of same soup, but maybe a different size. Still a lot of uncertainty as to how the industry is going to play out. I think everybody's pretty committed to this idea that there's no fix overnight, that the staffing shortage is going to be resolved anytime soon, maybe not even in our adult lives. But I think the real question just sits around, what is fulfillment going to look like? And a lot of what brought people off the couch or off their perm jobs and into the travel world was these exorbitantly high rates. We've learned over the last year that at the closing bell of 2022, over 60% of the hospitals in the United States ended up operating at like a deficit, right?
Right.
You can't keep doing that. And I know as children and as young adults, we grew up with this idea that hospitals are there simply to make us better. And I think in a lot of cases that is their intent. But there still has to be the dollars behind the scenes to keep those doors open, to keep them doing good business, to keep them doing good healthcare. And I think that's kind of what we're waiting to see. We have already seen a little bit of bill rate suppression at the beginning of the year. Only a couple weeks into 2023, the bill rates we are booking at are lower than we booked at all of 2022. And the average bill rate exposure, basically what the rates are coming into our doors at, are lower on average than we saw. So that'll probably be a big enough change to send some of those people who broke into travel in 21 and 22 for the money maybe back home. Maybe they'll reap the benefits of better compensation back home perm, and that spread or that gap won't be enough to keep them out there. So what that result is going to be is that there's going to be even more jobs that are going unfilled on our space, right? So I think it's not going to go away. I think the big change is going to be this kind of hybrid between travelers working both travel contracts and per diem. They're going to work maybe 3 shifts a week for us, and then have a per diem company in their back pocket in whatever market they're working to pick up an extra shift or 2. We've started hearing some people prognosticating out about one of the big changes. In the beginning of travel, there's these kind of weird numbers that just ended up being normal, like 13-week contracts. And I think people kind of hypothesized that was based or kind of a result of like the shortest term apartment complexes would allow people to rent their homes at, right? But we're starting to see a lot more conversation around 4-week contracts and 6-week contracts, 8-week contracts, 2-shift-a-week contracts. The thought in the past was, well, let's just get a traveler here, and instead of having them work 3 shifts a week, we'll have them work 4 or 5. That way they can do the job of 2 nurses, right? Well, they also understand, what travel used to be, you had to go at least 50 miles away from your house. Now, in a lot of markets, you can literally work in your home city as a travel nurse. They call it a local contract, right? But so then somebody came up with this idea that, well, why do we need them for full-time work, right? They're probably already working full-time. We probably expand our exposure rate if we'll offer them 1-shift-a-week contracts, 2-shift-a-week contracts, right? So I do think you're going to see a lot more people getting really creative as to what a normal contract looks like. I don't think the standard 13 weeks, 3 shifts a week forever and always is going to be what 2023 looks like for us.
I think you're probably 100% right there. Like, you'll see a definite evolution of the business. We know, just because we experienced it here in the industry, that Allied took a hit during COVID. What do you anticipate happening? Because you lived through that there.
Yeah.
What do you anticipate happening with that as we go into coming out of the pandemic, right?
Sure. So I think it'll mirror the nursing market pretty similarly in terms of a normalization of bill rates, a normalization of pay packages. The demand is set to the industry itself in the allied space is set to grow by about 8%. Where we've seen a big constriction of the bill rates on nursing, it will be less profound in the allied space. And I think it will settle where the demand meets the workforce, right? And so that's the tug and pull that will continue to kind of go on here in the early part of the year. Ultimately, I think for travelers to be incentivized to want to continue to travel, as Steve alluded to, the pricing will have to be there. Otherwise, unfortunately, we'll continue to have these open jobs that go unfilled. And Allied, it's maybe even more profound because they really need to fill these spots. They won't have near the quantity of need, but when they go unfilled, it really costs the hospital a lot of money.
Let's talk about that. It's a good transition, actually. So there are a number of states that now have mandated that, California being the first one, New York City was one of the next ones. I have a feeling there'll be a number of other states that follow, where you have to post your pay package. You have to post an average pay on your website if you're offering those jobs. It's happening. Talk about that a little bit, because that's something that. So Steve Ryan and I have talked about this for many years. If you could just post the pay out there, right? If you could be that transparent. We've always talked about bill rate with our travelers. We've been as transparent as you possibly could be without being cliche. Now we're posting actual pay packages on our website, or we will here pretty soon. There was a couple testing things we had to go through to get there, right? So talk about that.
Yeah, so I think California is probably the big giant that kind of forced a lot of people's hands. This isn't necessarily an Atlas thing, or even an industry thing. It's not even a healthcare thing. It's a California-wide thing, right? Pay transparency. And so basically what you're going to look for is anybody advertising jobs within the state of California, or even some are interpreting it as anybody advertising jobs to employees within the state of California. You've got to be very upfront with what the compensation is going to look like. You've got to post the pay packages. California is, like I said, the large giant that kind of pushed everything through that became effective in January of 23. But there are other areas, like New York on their heels. Yep. Denver, as a city, has actually mandated this as well, too, right? And so we'd be foolish to think this is going to be just one. So instead of going about it and just posting transparently in California, just posting transparently in Denver or New York, our approach is going to be just to post everything out there for all 50 states. So irregardless of, allied health, nursing, Nebraska, California, New York, the pay package is going to be there. Now, pay attention to the asterisk, right? It is not intended to be 100% completely the dollar for dollar offering, just because everybody's going to look for a little bit of something, right? That everybody's needs are going to be a little different. Some people are going to need things that others don't. And there is still just that one piece of pie, right, that it's all going to come out of. But I think what is going to benefit the travelers out there is just this differentiation of the good actors and the bad. You're going to be able to tell a lot quicker who is holding back maybe an inappropriate amount from those that are willing to give it to you, the clinician that's out there working.
Right. So keep in mind, the two very largest in our industry, out of the top 5, 2 of the very largest are publicly traded. You can go read their quarterly earnings statements and listen to it on every quarter when they post. And I can't remember you can do it through Yahoo Finance, you can do it through the Motley Fool. There's any number of different websites. You can go and listen to their quarterly earnings statement or read it and find out, okay, what are their margins? What are they doing right now? How is that looking? What is their outlook for the next quarter or the next year or whatever? A lot of what happens to them happens to us in arrears. 3 months, 6 months, it just kind of trails because they're much larger than we are, right? Their volumes are much larger. So it happens to us after it happens to them. So you can go out and look at that right now. Like, that's all public knowledge. I look at it every quarter. Like, that's one of the things I look forward to doing, and it helps us plan here as a company. At the same time, they're going through these exact same exercises that we are right now. So as much as you're seeing those jobs available through those websites right now, you're also seeing it on Vivian, right? That's another one that has become very, very large very recently with those pay packages posted. So you can go out there, look at them right now. You're going to see exactly what Steve said, that asterisk right there saying, wait a minute, this is all subject to the company posting it, how they take, what margin they take, what the bill rate is at the hospital, how the bill rate might change at the hospital, because that is a constant struggle with us. That's something we struggle with every single day, changing bill rates, changing pay packages. And so what is truth right now at noon might not be truth at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 6 o'clock at night or that type of thing. From an Allied standpoint, how has sites like Vivian changed things for you? Because it changed things from nursing, but Allied has evolved quite rapidly over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I think where nursing for a long time has had a very much an online community. There's been a lot of information sharing that goes on. That's now, I think, more so bled over into the Allied space, which is a good thing. We're not hiding anything. We want to be transparent with our travelers. We want to be upfront about pay expectations. I think the biggest thing that Vivian has probably changed for the Allied space, not probably dissimilar from nursing, is that everything is price focused, and it's very much becomes the focal point in all of your conversations. Well, what does this pay? What does this pay?
Sure.
When I first started as a recruiter, the motivation for people to get into travel was sometimes, refreshingly, that I want to travel and I want to learn things and I want to see new things and I want to build my resume, and not so focused on just the price. And then, not to mention, I'm going to be 13 weeks somewhere. I want to be somewhere where it's a supportive environment, where I'm part of a team, where it's a good culture, where I like going to work every day. And that's kind of unfortunately taken a back seat to some of the pricing.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't want to be tone deaf. Absolutely, we'd be foolish to think that pay isn't a driving factor for a lot of people in the final decision. The other stuff might be nice, and all things being equal, they might pick based on geography or the system they're going to learn and how they can beef up their resume when they return to their home hospital and stand out from their peers. Pay is a big part of it. And I think, you talk about the changes that are coming up in 2023. One of my concerns is the bad actors again, right? Like, with everything being so transparent and just published, there are still things that are going to separate companies, right?
Yeah.
And if all you're seeing and all you're deciding, you're making your decisions based around is that number to pick which companies you're going to call, you could lose out on a couple really good opportunities, because we all know not everybody does things the right way, right? And some people are going to post pay packages, bait and switch, right? You're going to call on that, and then you're going to find out it's different. And some people, it's going to be aggressive enough to sour them to the entire industry.
Right.
They're just going to go right back home and never look at us again, right? And some of them, it's going to be big enough that, well, I think this is how everybody operates. I'll just stick with this one. What I would still encourage and like to see is that the people that are making the decisions are going to still bounce between a couple companies and compare not just the bill rate or not just the posted pay, but what does my customized package look like? If I'm trying to go to Klamath Falls, Oregon, and 3 companies have the exact same job on this job board, but the pay gap is $100, $200 a week, is one of them already assuming I'm taking insurance, and is one of them assuming I'm not taking insurance?
Right.
That right there is the difference, right? So you know what you want, but me as the company, I don't know what you want until we have that conversation. Yep. My fear is that this transparency in paying is going to probably prevent people from comparing real apples to apples offers out there.
I've talked about it in this very seat for the past, I don't even know how, 6 months, 9 months, however it is. These two guys back here behind the camera know. It's not just because you are the fastest growing in whatever industry or whatever you're doing doesn't mean it's the best, right? You have to do your research. You absolutely have to do your research there. And that's make those phone calls, have those conversations, talk to those recruiters, invest that hour or whatever it is, talking to that recruiter on the phone. A text message or two is not going to do what you need right there. It simply is not. So
yeah, crazy enough, some companies in this industry still expect you to pocket dollar for dollar the entire cost of your compliance.
Absolutely.
But that's not going to show up as a difference in your comp plan, right?
No.
I mean, those little things that, unless you're on this side of the business, you don't always know. So again, it's not a plea for consideration. We're going to be higher than some. We're going to be lower than others. I just think it's in the best interest of every clinician, allied or nursing, to simply do the research, invest in your future, invest in yourself, make the phone call, or at a minimum, send the email asking, what all does this include and what does this exclude?
Yep. Yeah. Be, as much as your recruiter, especially with us, is your own best advocate, you are your own best advocate. Make those calls. Ask those questions. No question is dumb. No question is out of line. And if a recruiter makes you feel like that, you should probably find a different recruiter then. So, all right, last question. I want a prediction for 2023. I'm gonna go new guy first. All right, Dan, give me a prediction for 2023. Where do you think the industry goes? Maybe just in general, bill rates, jobs, what happens? What are we talking about Thanksgiving of this year?
I'm going to say that there is a continued demand, that bill rates will normalize, and I'm stealing from SIA, and that we will continue to see a volume of demand.
From, yeah.
So bill rate normalization, but we're going to have more jobs than we have clinicians to fill. And so the emphasis on finding good recruiters to find good candidates, qualified people to fill our jobs will be not any different from any year past, will be the focal point for 2023.
Interesting. Steve?
Probably a little different angle. I just think we are going to unfortunately see a bit of an attrition within our industry. Consolidation will continue to happen. There's already been a couple pretty significant sized acquisitions, big companies buying other companies, the big get bigger kind of thing, which is good. I mean, big actors can protect us, advocate for a lot of us in a lot of ways.
Sure.
But I think a lot of the companies you saw pop up in 2021, 2022, they're going to have a real difficulty staying competitive. Yeah. A lot of the pay structure or how them came up with how they were going to compensate their clinicians was based on this factor of just get to a certain size, and then we'll flip a switch and then we'll start making our money. What's going on in the economy out there, interest rates, it's way more expensive to do business today than it was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I think you're going to see a lot of companies that maybe didn't have the financial acumen to make good decisions, to grow their companies in a responsible manner, are going to either, one, be forced to sell, or two, close their doors. So both of those options mean fewer companies out there within the industry. So again, just an encouraging word. Do a little bit of research, invest some time in learning who it is you're working with. If this isn't a company out there that has a tremendous amount of following online, they're probably relatively new.
Yep.
There is no conversation that should be off limits. Now, I'm probably not going to share some of my interpersonal family stuff with everybody out there. But if you're investing in your career, no company should just want you for one contract. They want you for the long term, right? Turnover is very expensive to us.
Right.
If it's a new company, you should be comfortable asking, hey, not to be appropriate or inappropriate, but do I ever need to be concerned about a paycheck on Friday? Those kind of things, right? Have you ever missed payroll for your travelers? Those kind of questions I think are very, very much fair. And while uncomfortable to ask or maybe uncomfortable to answer for certain agencies out there, if you don't have a log of reviews on a company that you can put your trust in, I think that's an entry-level conversation before you waste any of your time. If a company hasn't made payroll, I'd be really concerned.
There are plenty of top 10s out there, right? And we're about to enter award season again, right? I know there's one top 10 that's coming out here in the next couple of weeks. There's another 2 or 3 that are coming after that. If they're not on that list, you probably should be asking deeper questions, probably.
And that's the job of a recruiter. I mean, there's all different ways to phrase them, right?
Yep.
Recruiter, career consultant, career advocate, recruiting, whatever they are, they're effectively supposed to be doing the same job, advocating for your future and looking out for you. So those conversations, that's the person. And if that person's not comfortable or given the tools by their organization to answer those questions, all good indicators that you need to be looking for a different company.
Correct. That's absolutely true. If the chatbot at 2:00 in the morning doesn't understand that you were just stuck by an HIV positive needle in the ER, because that's absolutely happened, you should probably be looking someplace else.
Most definitely.
So there you go. All right. So Dan, Steve, thank you so much. Dan's first time.
Thank
We
you.
got him through. It was awesome.
Good.
So,
Where's the pie?
well, yeah, exactly.
Slap a graphic up, just pieing him in the face.
We'll get you back here at the end of 2023, and we'll see if all of our predictions were true.
Sounds good.
All right.
Fingers crossed.
We'll see you next week.